So now jumping to America because the United States also had an interesting weekend in regards to an anti-Trump rally, or as they call the hands-off movement. We must stop Trump and Musk's illegal billionaire power grab Saturday, April 5th. So this is a national-wide protest that major cities from New York to Los Angeles to Chicago to Salt Lake City to all parts of the United States, Minnesota, so on, got together to get involved in this protest to go after not only just Trump being president, but also the fact of Doge, the cutbacks to entitlements, cutbacks to governmental programs that invest into Americans, and so on and so forth. So, hands off here, and they have a listed detail of what they're kind of protesting on. So, hands off Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, our jobs, our wallets, our bodies, fair elections, personal data, public lands, veteran services, cancer research. So already, just with that sentiment, I actually agree with. I agree with the majority of this. But here's where this goes downhill. And this is where I kind of open the covers a bit to really expose what this protest kind of really is. So, I agree up to cancer research. I agree with all of this. I agree that we should not be cutting entitlements, considering the fact that you paid for them. That's why they're called entitlements. And Donald Trump promised on the campaign trail and back in his first presidency that he was not going to touch the entitlements. But now, because he has a billionaire behind his back, breathing down his neck, they're cutting back on entitlements. They're cutting back on Social Security. They're cutting back on Medicare. They're cutting back on the Consumer Protection Bureau. That helps a lot of people. That is a safety net for the general public from the heinous billionaire class. They want to cut that back, and it's not going towards you. All these savings, all these dollars that they're finding, the savings aren't going on to you, pal. They're going towards Israel. They're going towards the Pentagon. That's how I knew Doge was kind of a scam. Because if Doge was actually a legitimate bureaucracy cutting measure, and if they actually focus on efficiency and wasteful spending, just like Steve Bannon said, you have to go after the Pentagon. The Pentagon is the worst for illustrious spending. They're the worst. They have failed every audit they've ever received. And yet we still give them billions of dollars, almost trillions of dollars. Here's where this gets interesting, though. So, after cancer research, look what it says there. NATO. NATO. So, I can understand not wanting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, your jobs being cut and eliminated by someone like Elon Musk who wants to robotize everything, turn everything to AI, turn everything to automation, or an H-1B visa. I can understand being angry towards that, but NATO, hands off a multinational military mafia. That's what NATO is. They're not there for peace. They're not there for security. They're actually against security. They want to jeopardize security. They want to blackmail other countries so they can get the most bang for their buck so that more countries invest into NATO, and that goes towards military contractors. That goes towards the billionaire class that exploit us for more war. That's why we had the Ukraine war. That's why we have malicious regime change wars, because of NATO. Because of organizations like this. So, it's already starting to go downhill. It's already starting to go downhill. But then it tries to go back again. After that, it says consumer protections, clean air, clean energy, schools, libraries, free speech, LGBTQ plus rights, immigrants, courts, and more. So again, I agree with 90% of this. But having NATO on that list really says a lot. Really says a lot about this. So here's ABC News saying thousands of protesters have flooded the streets of Boston demonstrating in the anti-Trump hands-off rally. It's one of the 1,200 other protests unfolding in all 50 states across the country. So here's what ABC News reported.
Here's a live look at Boston, Massachusetts now as we check back in on one of our top stories, anti-Trump protests taking place across the country today after a tumultuous week, to say the least, on Wall Street and the economy. We want to point out, just a few minutes ago, we did show you a protest. We said it was Boston. It was not Boston. It was an unrelated protest. But what you are looking at right now is Boston, and I'm from there. I can recognize this. This is the plaza right outside of City Hall in downtown.
So, a lot of people showed up for this. A lot of people obviously are angered by Trump, not just, typical Democrat liberals, but also a lot of MAGA people are upset at Trump right now in the Trump administration, because all the promises of ending the wars, all the promises of making America great again, all the promises, that Trump campaigned for, and a lot of people voted, they went out in droves campaigning and voted for this guy, are falling apart. And it's even worse now, because now with these tariffs, it's causing markets to crash. It's causing the business economy to plummet. It's causing the global markets to crash. So all these measures that Trump campaigned on, making America great again, he's going to protect your jobs, he's going to protect your entitlements, he's going to make you, you're going to be so sick of winning. Remember, he keeps saying that? You're going to be so sick and tired of winning. Well, a lot of people are not winning, surprisingly, just like every administration in the government. It's almost like Trump is just a repeat, a constant replay of the same establishment garbage that we've seen with Barack Obama and Joe Biden and George Bush and Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush. It's almost like it's a continuation of the exact same crap. So congratulations. Trump was not the anti-deep state that we thought. Trump's actually just a rebranding of the deep state. He got out with the old, he brought in the new. It doesn't mean it's actually going to change anything. And we're seeing that out in the open. You saw that with the ushering of known Zionists pledging their allegiance to Israel first before they do anything to America. Before they protect or do anything to serve the needs of the people that they got that they got elected for, they're pledging their allegiance for a foreign country. Why? Because they're all bot shills. So here's another example of this. This is in Detroit. And what's interesting about this is by the river. And by the river, right across from Detroit, is Windsor, Canada. Windsor, Ontario, Canada. And it says right here, hands-off protest today in Detroit. Luke is on the other side supporting our Canadian brothers and sisters. So turns out the hands-off movement and the elbows-up movement, there's a bit of an alliance there. We're getting some unity, folks. And this is what's so good about this, is the fact that, hey, Americans aren't actually upset with Canada, and Canada isn't actually upset with Americans. It's just their shitty governments. That's the problem here. We have to come together. We have to realize that Canada and the United States are not enemies. The governments are. The governments are enemies of us. And considering we have Mark Carney, the globalist central banker, currently further destructing our country here in Canada, and yet Donald Trump completely obliterating his campaign promises, serving to the needs of Israel in the South, Americans and Canadians of working class backgrounds all need to align themselves and realize that we have been taken over by a far deeper entity that has destroyed the sovereignty, the essence, the security of both our nations. That's not just one person involved. It's a whole structure that's being obliterated by globalist dictators, by authoritarians, by aristocrats and autocrats and billionaires like Elon Musk and other investors that don't give a damn about you. So this is actually pretty brilliant here. And here's the video showing this. That's amazing. That's amazing. Considering the fact I turn on the TV here and all I keep seeing is Canadian anchors telling us we got to hate Americans. We got to hate Americans because they voted for this. Oh, and Americans got to hate Canada because they voted in Mark Carney. No, you don't. A lot of us didn't. Nobody voted for Mark Carney. If you actually look at it, nobody did. Not a lot of people did. Not a lot of people want Mark Carney. They're sick and tired of the same old goddamn playbook being used and abused on us. We want change. We want things to happen for this country. We want prosperity. We want the end to mass migration. We want the end of the fentanyl crisis. We want the end of organized criminal cartels occupying government bureaucracy. We want an end to this corruption. We want an end to this tirade. Don't fall into the media's propaganda because they want you divided. They want further and further division. Why? Because it pleases their owners. It pleases the billionaire class. The billionaire class doesn't give a damn about this. They don't give a damn about working class people. And they're the ones that want this trade war. They're the ones that want this constant butting heads. They want the propaganda for two nations to hate each other. But obviously, this shows a lot of solidarity. That's amazing. Here's some other examples of other protests. And again, this is all 50 states that are happening right now on April 5th. So Boston, New York, Chicago, Portland, San Francisco, San Diego, Idaho. Idaho. Not just potatoes, ladies and gentlemen, but there's actual people protesting the Trump administration. Idaho, pretty red state there. Utah, another predominant red state. Oakland. Here's some more of this. So here's a map of the United States of all the protesting that went down on Saturday here. It says the nationwide hands-off protests had an estimated 2.5 to 3 million people in the U.S. alone. Let's show you some pictures. Now, obviously, that's an estimate there because a lot of the times when it comes to a protest, the organizers are going to pitch a number, police officers are going to pitch a number, and city officials are going to pitch a number. So we don't know exactly for sure how many people showed up to these rallies, but look at this. Look at all the red dots there. Looks like the United States has a case of the measles. They need to go into quarantine right now. But look at that. Look at all the red dots. Obviously, you know, the coastlines, a lot of the East Coast, West Coast area. But even look at red states. Look at Texas. Look at Louisiana. Florida. Florida. A deeply red Trump state. People are sick and tired of this. Why? Because they didn't voted for a war with Iran. They didn't vote for bombing more of Yemen. They wanted the wars to end. They're sick and tired of having their tax dollars being taken away, being siphoned away, our economy crashing for the needs of bloodthirsty warmongers that want to slaughter more and more people overseas. They want an end to that. So that really shows a lot of solidarity. That shows a lot of people are coming together for this. But, as I said, be careful what you wish for. Because as we're seeing these hands-off protests, note that there is going to be a lot of trickery, a lot of tomfoolery that is going to quash the true essence of being anti-Trump and being hands-off in this situation. For example, here's some pictures here. This is kind of the typical, you know, establishment Democrat neoliberal scumbag that you usually see on a regular basis. And every time I see a picture like this, and even more so with this hands-off rally, it makes me think of every other clown show protest that doesn't have the actual essence of being a real protest. Because a real protest, you're determined, you have the facts, you have all the measures, and you go through all the jurisdictions. Okay, I have to go here, I have to challenge these people, I know exactly what my intent is. I'm not just going out to the streets and yelling crazy things I heard on TV. But you get people like these who are constantly doing this. So here, for example, on the left here, you can see this picture, a woman holding up a sign. And look at the first picture there. Got a list of predominant leaders, and she says, Volodymyr Zelensky, not a dictator. You know, a man who's canceled all of his oppositions, won't allow for election, silence all the free press, doesn't allow people to practice a religion. Not a dictator. Not a dictator. Why? Because MSNBC told me. Rachel Maddow would never lie to me. She's a lesbian. Come on. She would never lie to me. And then underneath that, Vladimir Putin, dictator. J.D. Vance, a dick. Donald Trump, a traitor. And look at her polls, even Ukrainian flag colors. Of course. Of course. This is why moments like these always get ruined. This is why these protests start off with decentable intentions, always get ruined by these shit libs. Because you know that the mainstream media is going to focus their attention on this, and you're going to see a lot of people that are going to look at this and give more empathy to Trump because they're realizing how much bullshit is being spewed by people like them. I mean, look at even on the right-hand pictures here. Look at the Third Reich. And they're showing pictures of Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk wearing like Nazi clothing. Again, as you're supporting the funding of legit Nazis. Legit Ukrainian Nazis who are white supremacists. Not even a joke. Not even a joke. Not even hyperbole. It's been proven. It's been documented. They even express it on their social media page. They're openly proud of being a white supremacist Nazi in Ukraine that you're supporting. But yeah, you're pointing the finger at Trump and saying he's the Nazi. Do you not see the hypocrisy? Do you not see how stupid you're being on purpose? Here's the one on the right-hand corner here. No more government of Putin. Stop the madness. No one rules if no one obeys. So, this is what's going to discredit a movement that should be focused on, hey, Social Security, Medicare, the entitlements. You should be going after and hammering hard on Trump's promises that he made during the campaign and why he's not committed to those promises. What changed? What happened? Well, he started committing to Israel. Why? Because Miriam Adelson gave him a blank check. Why aren't you calling that out? Why aren't you calling the pledging to a foreign nation before America? How come I don't see any protesting about that? Oh, we can't allow that in American society. We can't allow we can't consider critics of a foreign country that has bought in your government. That's why we're going to allow these idiots. That's why we're going to allow a bunch of screwball idiot liberals to diminish the whole intent of this protest. So now that anyone that is seeing this on Twitter and other social media sites that are looking at these pictures are going to immediately be turned away. And they're going to give Trump even more credit. That's why the Democrats are losing so badly. No matter how bad Trump is being right now, he's still better than the Democrats. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? That constant stuff like this doesn't work. Here's some more images here. We're all the cooch now. Antifa now has a tank division. And there's fatties against fascism. Again, supportive of legit fascism around the world. Doesn't see the hypocrisy. Doesn't see the irony in this. Let it be known that a lot of shit libs out there are irony intolerant. They don't understand it. They can't comprehend the situation. So Medea Benjamin pointed this out. Medea Benjamin of Code Pink said, why in the world would the hands-off rallies include NATO on its list of critical issues and government agencies to support? Exactly. Why would we be supportive of a multinational War machine. Why would we be supportive of that? Oh, because the Democratic Party is also pro-war. Doesn't matter who you vote for, you're going to be in war. Whether it's the Democrats' war, whether it's the Republicans' war, no matter whose war it is, you're constantly going to be in war. Why? Because your entire political system is bought, corrupted, and captured by evil, nefarious ghouls at a higher power than you can even imagine. And NATO is one of them. What is NATO going to do for you? How good is NATO in protecting you when you're constantly at war? How good of a job are they protecting you and installing peace when we're constantly at war and manufacturing more war? So, Code Pink, they had their own rally. Surprisingly, at the same time, this hands-off rally happened. And you notice when we showed the ABC clip there earlier, they mentioned about another protest. There was another protest out there, but it was unrelated. That's because in Washington here, before there was the hands-off rally, there was a pro-Palestine anti-genocide rally that was supposed to take place. And they still had it. They still had the same event because they had it all planned out way in advance before the hands-off rallies. But notice how the media never covered that. They did not mention a word about this. Isn't that also kind of interesting? You would think that the pro-Palestine and the anti-genocide rally could maybe come together with the hands-off rally and say maybe hands off to the war machine. Maybe stop the tirade going around the world. Maybe focus on America first. You would think that would happen, but that didn't happen. And here's Code Pink reporting on this. Thousands of people are taking to Washington, D.C. to demand the U.S. stop funding and supporting Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people. So here's a bit of footage of it.
You want a world in which all journalists are like Gaza, uncompromising in their broadcasting the needs of their people. This is what the people of the world want. This is what all people in the world want. But it is not simply enough for us to know what it is that we want, what kind of future we are fighting for.
So I'm going to assume that the shoes that are on the road there are symbolizing all the children, all the innocent lives that have been murdered in the recent reboots of this genocide, because they tried to implement some ceasefire. We knew that Israel was eventually going to break that ceasefire. Their whole intention was to break that ceasefire. They never cared. Again, the whole intention of all this, the reason October 7th happened, the reason why they won't actually save the hostages is because they intentionally want to leverage as much of this genocide as possible so they can obliterate the entire Palestinian population and seize territory. They want to take over the Gaza Strip. They want to take over the West Bank. They want to take parts of Lebanon. They want to take parts of Syria. They want to take parts of Jordan. They want to take parts of Egypt. They will stop at nothing. These are bloodthirsty, psychotic sociopaths that believe they are holier than thou. These are supremacists. And like I've been saying, how is the IDF, how is Zionism any different than the Ku Klux Klan? How is it any different than the Nazis that they so proclaim that they're trying to defend the people of Israel from? Oh, we're trying to prevent another Holocaust from Arab people while performing a Holocaust. Because sometimes the best way to prevent a wipeout of your population is to wipe out another population that had nothing to do with it. That's what Zionism has done. And it's been propagandizing people for decades, for eons. Since birth, people have been sucking down this propaganda, drinking down this Kool-Aid to believe this cult madness and not understanding their own history, not understanding that Zionism and Judaism are two totally separate things. They're not complacent. They did it intentionally so they can use it as a cover so that anyone that critiques Zionism is automatically anti-Semitic. While not realizing that mass slaughtering a bunch of Semites in Palestine is actually anti-Semitic. Or beating up Jewish people in your own sacred homeland is also anti-Semitic. There's a lot more anti-Semitism coming from Zionists than there are college student protesters. They'll never tell you that, but just keep that in mind. So here is Medea Benjamin herself reporting on this.
So the Great March of people supporting Palestine is going down the main streets of Washington, D.C. to the headquarters of ICE to say, hands off our students. And then from there, we're going to the White House to say, stop supporting Israel, stop sending our bombs, our weapons to kill children. It's a really spirited crowd, and I think it makes people feel a tiny bit better about what's happening to be among people who are sane and compassionate and want to stop the slaughter.
So that's an effective leader right there. That is an organizer of a true protest event. They're precise. They know exactly what they're doing. They know their intentions. They know exactly who to go and where to approach in this situation. They mentioned that they're going to the ICE building because they're protesting not only about this, they're protesting about the deportation of college student Mahmoud Khalid. Obviously, like, this is how you actually do it. This is actually how you do it. Instead of just bringing people together to scream about what you heard on TV, you actually have true intentions. You have a plan. You have a purpose. You have a set goal with these protests. You're actually going against something. And what I saw with the hands up movement, just like what I saw with the elbows up movement, just like we see with the Women's March protests in the first Trump administration, it was just very empty. It was just very empty, very vague. There was no precise moment or precise action that they're protesting on. They were just protesting the fact that Trump's in office. Okay. Well, who are you directing that anger to? Anybody! Not really an effective protest. That's just you voicing your opinion loudly. A protest has to actually have a purpose. Just like what we see here. The purpose of this protest and this countermeasure is directly at the United States government to stop funding a genocide and to stop deporting people based on free speech expression. Very precise, very accurate, very easy to understand. The hands-off movement, you don't know what the hell is going on. And we see pictures like that, that's what's discrediting a movement like hands-off. And there could be potential of that. It could be a potential protest if it wasn't for the shit liberty. If it wasn't for the Democrats, the MSNBC viewers that are complacent to showing up in these protests and making a mockery of the situation. That's what I saw there. It was a mockery. It just turns into a whole clown show. So the reason I give a bit more credit to, say, Code Pink or a pro-Palestine rally compared to the hands-off rally is also because if the establishment, if senators and politicians are petrified of a protest, that's how you know it's effective. When the higher-ups and the status quo and the bureaucrats and the autocrats look onto a protest and think, oh, man, they're actually dangerous to me. That's when you know you actually have a counter. That's when you actually have legitimacy and you have leverage against people like this. And that's where you get politicians like this guy. This is, I think this is Josh Hawley. Congressman Josh Hawley, or Senator Josh Hawley, I do believe. And you're about to see here, they now have to make a story. They have to now smear Code Pink that's involved in this pro-Palestine marches and smear them as Chinese propagandists, that they're funded by the Communist Party of China. So here's a breakdown of that.
Code Pink is funded by Communist China.
100% funded by the Chinese Communist Party.
Funded by CCP.
You might have heard recently allegations that Code Pink is funded by China. I'm here to tell you that yes, those allegations are false. Congressman Jim Banks recently wrote a letter to Attorney General Pamela Bondi requesting that they investigate Code Pink for our alleged funding. He asked her to answer 4 questions. As the coordinator of Code Pink's China is Not Our Enemy campaign, I would like the chance to personally answer those questions for Jim. First question. Has Code Pink or any of its employees ever registered with the DOJ as a foreign agent acting on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party or any agency, official, or agent of the government of the People's Republic of China? Jim. No, Code Pink staff does not act on behalf of the PRC or any foreign agent or entity. We are merely concerned citizens acting in the interest of peace. Second question. Is it the view of the DOJ that Code Pink is legally obligated to disclose its status as a foreign agent under FARA, considering the organization's extensive efforts to lobby members of Congress and U.S. federal agencies for conciliatory U.S. policies towards China? Code Pink is not a foreign agent and is therefore not legally obligated to register as one. Lobbying efforts around China have focused solely on encouraging diplomacy and dialogue with China and avoiding a potential future physical confrontation. I believe war between the U.S. and China would be devastating for the entire world, US, China, and everybody else, and therefore we should avoid it at all costs. Third question. What actions is the DOJ taking to counter the CCP's efforts to expand its influence in the US through funding far-left entities that oppose US foreign policy interests and advocate in the interests of foreign adversaries? While I cannot speak for any other organizations, Code Pink is a non-partisan organization primarily interested in avoiding war. We do not believe war is in the interests of any U.S. citizen and should not be the predominant U.S. foreign policy strategy. Many foreign adversaries are also against war, but war is not a rare thing to oppose. We advocate for peace because we believe in peace, not because of the interests of any foreign entity. Fourth and final question. What actions is the DOJ taking to address FARA violations committed by U.S. domiciled entities that lobby against the foreign policy interests of the U.S. while simultaneously receiving funding from foreign adversaries? Now, this is a great question that I would also like to know. What is the DOJ doing to address the billions of dollars Congress members are taking from the Israeli lobby to act in its interests? Is it not against U.S. foreign policy interests to fund genocide? I believe the correct answer is nothing, which is disappointing, but not surprising.
So, you can tell they're more scared of Code Pink than they are the hands-off protesters. Because the hands-off protesters are not against war. Code Pink is. They're against NATO. They're against the war machine. They don't want war with Iran. They don't want a genocide with Palestinians. They don't want Ukrainians slaughtered. They don't want Russians slaughtered. They don't want anyone to be slaughtered. That's why this is considered more a legitimate protest than any of the shit you saw with the hands-off rallies. Hands-off rallies, yeah, it made a lot of noise. Yeah, it got people together. And yes, it did bring a conversation to people about Trump's actions when it comes to cutting entitlements. But if you want to talk about real pushback, this is where it comes from. These are people that are poised, that are dedicated, they're determined to actually understand how the system has played them and go after the entire system. Go after senators who deliberately take money out of the pockets of foreign adversaries and foreign nations that are considered allies, conducting in warfare, conducting in war crimes. That's what Code Pink is doing. Do you think people at Hands Off are doing that? No. Because they want to support Ukraine. They want to support more war. War is good as long as it's selected properly. As long as we pick and choose what countries to bomb, it's okay. It's okay. And notice how none of those people had at the Hands Off rally had Palestine. No protest for stopping the genocide in Gaza. Oh, it's because a lot of them are probably Zionists. Because that's what the television tells them. So, here, just an example. There's Senator Josh Hawley. His face there. Calls activists from Code Pink anti-Semitic and Holocaust supporters as they confronted him for taking money from AIPAC and pro-Israel lobbies. So here's what went down with that.
It's a privilege to stand against you.
It's the China-funded people again.
China.
Not China. There we go.
That's not anti-Semitism. That's anti-Semitism. I'm not the racist. How come there's no...
You are a racist involved in a racist war.
You are funded by Chinese money.
You're such a liar.
Free Palestine. By you, terrible people.
Get zero money from China.
You get God's money. It's been reported everywhere.
Liar,
You are liars and you're racist.
Liar, and you're the racist.
You're China-funded liars and racists, and it's a privilege to stand against you.
You are a liar and a racist.
You're the racist. Shame on you.
Racist.
Apartheid lover. You're the only one being paid off. You AIPAC slave. AIPAC slave.
And lo and behold, there it is. Lo and behold, Josh Hawley is in the pocket of the Israel lobby. $312,000. And if this guy was a legitimate person, if this guy actually had a basis to that allegation, oh, you're backed by China. You get gobs of money by the Chinese people. It's all over the place. It's all over the place. Oh, really? Name some publications that reported it. Go ahead. Go ahead. We're listening. He didn't say a word. Didn't say a word. But you're funded by China. You're funded by China. You're Holocaust supporters. You guys are crazy. So imagine someone like that compared to just someone who's just hands off. How much of a direct threat are they to the establishment that's actually doing the damage to you and your family? And now understand why I give more credit to the pro-Palestine supporters and people like Code Pink than I do just the average Democrat shit lib that's just anti-Trump for the sake of being anti-Trump. Not really understanding the full perspective of things and why we're in this mess.